Welcome to Cinema Lives. And today I'm joined by my friend Ricky. How are you today?
Good, thanks, Jules. How are you?
I'm good. And we're going to be talking about 28 years later, The Bone Temple, directed by Nia DaCosta and written by Alex Garland from this year, 2026. And just to get started a little bit, I thought maybe just talk about some brief thoughts of what you thought about the first one, not being 28 days later, but 28 years later, the one before this.
Oh, I liked it. I know I had it somewhere in my letterbox top 10 of the
Mhm.
year. I think I gave it a 4.5.
Mm,
Really enjoyed it. Um,
nice.
and I was one of the people that absolutely loved the ending, and I'd heard so much about how bonkers and maybe bad the ending of the movie was. When it happened and we had the Jimmy show up. I loved it, and I didn't understand why people
Mm,
had a problem with it. What
yeah.
in a sort of a almost post-apocalyptic type thing. Anyone that survives is probably going to be some level of strange. And having a bunch of
Mhm.
people that have learnt to fight really well, that have some kind of uniform, not really a big deal. Not really a stretch for me.
Yeah, I had no problem with the ending of the of 28 years later either. I think when I went to see it, I didn't have any idea of what was coming, so I hadn't heard about the ending or anything like that. But I liked it, and I was excited for where it was going to go. And I love the first movie. Well, I should say the first movie. 28 years later, the previous movie. Um, and I probably would give that like a 5 out of 5. I think. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was one of the favorite movies of last year. And to move to this one, which is the Bone Temple. The other one was directed by Danny Boyle, but now it's directed by Nia DaCosta, and I didn't notice too many big differences in terms of the direction. It seemed pretty. There is a different tone to this movie, but in terms of the way it feels, like it sort of carries over smoothly. I think.
Yeah, if I had been told it was directed by Danny Boyle, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. I
Mhm.
think although Danny Boyle has a style, I don't think it's so specific and regimented that there isn't some variety between movies. So there was
Mhm.
nothing that seemed off-brand
Mhm.
from a Danny Boyle movie.
Yeah. Well, the only thing is probably that Danny Boyle has this sort of part of his style is this sort of like extreme editing or like fast paced sort of almost like little bits that kind of feel music video-y or like
Yeah.
something like that. But there's nothing like that in this movie aside from maybe some of the dance sequences or musical
Yeah.
sequences.
Well, and sometimes directors, as they mature, they rely less on their usual bag of tricks just as they mature. So,
Mhm.
um, again, I mean, the thing is, 28 years later has a quite a different feel from 28 days later.
Yes.
Anyway, so they
Mhm.
all are quite different and
Mhm.
unique. I mean, 28 days later in particular, obviously 28 weeks later is a more of a it's more of a aliens to alien type thing where the scope increases and it
Mhm.
becomes a bit more of a blockbuster. Um, but I kind of expect each of them are going to be a little bit different at this point.
Yeah. And it's interesting because they filmed 28 years later on an iPhone or various iPhones. I think sort of going because they filmed 28 days later on like mini DV cameras at the time. So what would have been like they were going for like something like this could be found footage or like a verite quality with 28 days later. And I think they were sort of going with the lineage of that in 28 years later, but like it's interesting because it still feels like the evolution of where we're at with smartphone cameras now. Like it
Mm.
sort of just feels like a normal movie. It doesn't feel like, you
Yeah,
know, there's some sort of found footage element to it.
I think I think the camera they're using, the iPhone, I think so much about the quality is things like lighting and framing. So I think you can get a really good image on $1,000 iPhone if you've
Mhm.
got lighting and you've got talented people involved. So I don't think if I didn't know with 28 years later, I don't think I would have really even cottoned onto it. I think I would have if asked, I would have said it. It's some kind of digital. camera, but I wouldn't have gone, oh, this is clearly a smartphone.
Mhm. Yeah, same here. But to move more into the 28 years later, the Bone Temple, I was excited for this. It was interesting to be able to see it like only, I mean, I don't know, like 7 months or something like that after the other one came out. We're going from June 2025 to January 2026. It was also interesting it being released like at the very beginning of the year, like right after New Year's. It was like mid-January, but which maybe usually is seen as like dumping ground for lower quality movies. But I
Oh,
mean, this was a great
d
movie, and it could have been released in the summer, but maybe it wouldn't.
dumping ground. Like I object to that. It's a very competitive month where you have to compete with Jason Statham action movie every January.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought maybe it was like it came down a little bit for me from the previous entry. I didn't quite, it wasn't at that level for me. And maybe I would need to rewatch it. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to rewatch it before this recording, but I definitely do want to rewatch it. I saw it at the SIF downtown here in Seattle, which is like a really big, nice theater, and the
Mm,
sound was amazing, and it was a great experience watching it. But I do feel like I need to maybe go back to it,
mm.
and maybe having some time in between. The longer it will be, maybe even waiting longer from now, like could be interesting, having it a little bit more fresh in my mind. But like, yeah, I think I don't even know how to explain what my issues with it were exactly. It's just, I guess there was a I didn't expect, like, I expected it to be more Spike being the lead. And
Yep.
he is the lead, but like we're shifting to various different perspectives throughout the movie. And we are also, a big part of it is Dr. Kelson's story.
Hmm.
And one
I
of my
think he's the
favorite,
lead.
yeah, definitely.
Spike is it Spike's in the back seat. He's
Mhm,
there. But this is Kelson's movie, which is why I love it and loved it
mhm.
more than 28 years later.
Yeah. And everything with Dr. Kelson and the zombie that he's sort of curing, who I forget the name of that particular zombie,
Samson.
but
Samson
Samson.
bringing the big dick energy.
Yes, absolutely. But I loved all that stuff. And there's a, spoiler alert, like, there is a, towards the end, when Samson is sort of coming to in the train, and he talks about the ticket and all that stuff. I thought that scene was amazing. And
Um,
yeah.
if I was to think about reasons why somebody would like this one less,
Mhm.
which I don't, I would say I think it's very episodic. Um,
Yeah.
I think it sort of feels like three or four different little mini movies to starting with the adventures of the Jimmies, that extended sort of torture scene with the
Mhm.
flaying. And the Carlson stuff is like a different movie and they intersect. Um,
Mhm.
but it almost feels like this 28 years saga is like a 10-part HBO
Yeah.
limited series, and this was sort of like episodes like 4 and 5.
Mhm. And I think maybe part of what it came down a little bit for me was that I had a big emotional reaction to the first or the previous movie, with everything between Spike and his mom and all that stuff. I thought it was very emotionally powerful.
Yep.
And this one isn't necessarily emotionally powerful, I wouldn't say. Maybe some stuff with Samson towards the end sort of is powerful, but like it's much more sort of delving into horror, I think, with everything with Jimmy's gang and all this stuff. But it also does go into an episodic territory that you mentioned, that I think makes sense, being that this is a continuing series. So looking back on it, I think it's something different. But I don't like. I think that's interesting though. So it's not a knock on the
No,
movie.
I
Yeah.
like I've seen, not that I closely study the critical and audience reception to movies, but um my take was I think this one has a higher letterboxed rating.
Mhm.
But I've also seen some stronger detractor comments. Ignoring the fact that you gave it quite a middle of the road score, it does seem to
Mhm.
have a little bit of a love it or hate it aspect to it, with a little bit more people loving it.
Mhm.
Um, I find like the emotional center of this one to be stronger than the previous one, and I think 28 years later, with this the focus on the family and the trying to,
Mhm.
geez, memory's a little bit blurry, but I believe it was to try and
Mhm.
find medicine to help.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. Um,
And medicine to cure his mom.
okay. Yes, yes, that's right. Um, I've kind of seen that before. I think Dr. Kelson's story, and I really loved and identified with him. He is, a truly altruistic, good person. But even a
Mhm.
good person that survived this long has to be pretty nuts. Um, and his desire for friendship with Samson and his desire to find some kind of cure in spite of his sort of mania, I felt very touching, and also a key moral choice he makes in the final act of the movie, I think is really, really interesting. Um,
Mhm.
Going from
Yeah.
playing along, I will also say that whole scene um, with the Iron Maiden performance will almost certainly be my favorite movie scene this year. And if I was to think with 28 years later, what was the standout scene? It was probably the quote unquote bridge scene under the stars. But I don't think that's going to stick with me like
Mhm.
Helson's performance of old Nick. Absolutely amazing. That must have been such a treat in the cinema.
Yeah. That was fantastic in the theater, and I love the whole Iron Maiden scene at the end. And not just that, but like I mean that was the best scene probably, but like all the musical interludes where he's playing records
Yeah.
and sort of dancing with Samson and stuff. Like I loved
Yep.
all that stuff. The sound was fantastic in that theater. So it was great to watch it that way. But like
Are
yeah,
you
all the
a
musical stuff was good.
are you a Duran Duran fan?
I am maybe not like a
Yeah.
massive fan, but I do like them.
Yeah, I think it was great. I think there were
Mhm.
three Duran Duran songs, there were at least two,
Mhm.
which and it was sort of presented as diegetic music
Mhm.
that it's the music he's listening to, and it makes sense for a British man to have a collection of records of mostly British artists like Duran Duran
Yeah.
and Radiohead, and in particular the use of Ordinary World,
Mhm.
which was from that early '90s comeback album by Duran Duran. I just what an amazing combination of visuals and music.
Mhm.
I've been listening to that song a lot since. I think that's such a powerful scene, and the lyrics fit without it being one of those really obnoxious songs that just say what's happening, like in a kids movie and there's a bunch of dogs come running out and it plays Baha Men's Who Let the Dogs Out.
Yeah. Definitely. But it's interesting on the way this movie like plays with like pop culture, like media and stuff, like sort of the idea of people in a post-apocalypse and the idea that they wouldn't because I don't think this is done in other sort of post-apocalyptic movies that much, but just them looking back on media and missing certain things like music and all this stuff. I really like that idea.
Yeah, I feel like it's been done
Mhm.
before, but I can't remember like what that would be. And the closest I could think to was what's that movie? Is it Neil Marshall's Doomsday? Um,
Mm.
Post-apocalyptic, and in one of the areas that in one of the early ones, that one of the more John Carpenter type ones, they're all listening to Good Thing, that British song
Yeah.
by London Beat, is it?
Mhm.
Just this sort of probably early '90s or late '80s song, and that kind of had a similar feel to me of like, oh, they're listening to they're listening to Good Thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've never seen Doomsday, but I should see it.
Huh?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. But the only other thing I could kind of think of that's sort of like that is which I also haven't seen this movie, but I'm just aware of it. But like in Terminator Salvation, I
Hmm.
think they have that the Christian Bale character in a post-apocalypse listening to the Beastie Boys. But yeah.
It's always Beastie Boys, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like white males in the future, based on the Star Trek movies, love listening to the Beastie Boys.
Mhm. Definitely.
I
But
think I reckon I bet after this I'm going to think of another example where they do it, where it's because it's this funny trick, eh? Because you go like and the more sort of weird and niche it is, the funnier it is to just double down,
mhm,
whether it's Teletubbies, or Jimmy Savile, and just
mhm.
basically because of limited exposure to everything else that was happening in pop culture, like they probably have no idea who the Beatles are, all these other things.
Mhm.
But Jimmy's and Teletubbies,
Yeah.
which I think they might call Teletubbies. I think they might get it a little bit wrong. There's that whole
Yeah.
quote unquote Chinese whispers where something gets slightly lost.
Yeah, which makes sense because they're cut off from everything, after everything goes to hell. But yeah, with the media stuff, it does not just with the music that I mentioned, but like you said, it like exploits other elements like the Teletubbies, and I really like all that stuff too. And the idea that was kind of explored in the previous movie with them being locked off, like the whole world around them is still going on, but
Yep.
there's sort of this zone in the United Kingdom that is being quarantined and is just sort of in a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Yeah.
And it was interesting having Spike in the previous movie like encounter like iPhones and stuff like that, which are still a thing in
Yeah.
this universe.
Here's a question for you. If you saw this movie and it didn't have 28 on
Mm,
it and it was a standalone movie, what genre would you consider it to be? Because we sort of automatically peg it with horror
mm.
because it's in the same series as 28 Days Later. But here's the question: is it a horror?
I think I still would call it horror. It's not there's not a lot of zombie stuff, which I think maybe would throw people off, but I would call it horror because of the Jimmy like torture stuff and stuff like that.
Which
Um,
which seems to lean more towards the thriller sort of thing, right? Like because
mhm,
yeah, there's so little of the zombie stuff, and there's more of the zombie stuff is drama and
mhm,
non-horror. It almost I was thinking I would categorize it as a post-apocalyptic drama. Um,
mhm,
there's the very few zombie scenes. Um,
mhm,
they almost feel shoehorned in as an obligation to it. They clearly
mhm.
want to tell a very different story
Yeah.
about sort of life after the ruin of a civilization. Mm.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting though. I think they still like what they do with the Samson character, I think makes the zombie stuff still worthy of being in there. And yeah, ultimately they've created a universe and they're just sort of exploring different angles of it. And I like that a lot. Mm.
Yeah. Samson was great, and the moment where he what does he say? Moon? Is it?
Yeah.
Great moment, and I'm glad that I had a feeling that Kelson was going to die. It
Mhm.
sucked when he did because I would have liked to have seen him again. But I was as it was happening, I was like, please have Samson show up and give him some sign that he was successful. And although I can't remember the exact specifics, I remember having the satisfaction of
Mhm.
he did I believe Samson came to him and showed empathy as he was dying and I think ostensibly took revenge for him. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
Carlson actually gets that win. He didn't think he was going to live forever, but knowing that he achieved something, sort
Mhm.
of made his journey complete.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely happens towards at the end of the movie. I think that was done really well. But it is sort of unfortunate. Like apparently this movie did really poorly at the box office.
Yeah.
But to do spoilers at the very end, they sort of meet up with Killian Murphy from 28 Days Later, or that is
Hmm.
shown to be something that's about to happen. And I definitely want to see where the series goes. I really hope that somehow they still manage to do at least one more, but because I want to see that
Yeah,
where that goes. But and it'll also be
they will.
interesting. Apparently, Danny Boyle's coming back to it, or that was the plan. Um, but anyway, I hope it ends up happening.
They'll do something. It might be a reduced budget. It might be straight to Netflix or something. But I'll I'll
Mhm,
I'll I'll take what we can get. I just hope that the return to re-establishing it with that 28 days later connection doesn't take away the weirdness.
mhm,
I hope it's not like after The Last Jedi when they sort of tried
mhm,
to go back to the basics with Rise of Skywalker. Was that what it was called?
mhm. Yeah.
And it was, oh, okay, we went a little bit too weird and different. I really hope that there's some weirdness and that the
Mhm.
final in the trilogy will have something unique to bring.
Yeah, definitely. I think as long as it's written by Alex Garland, it
Yep.
should have some weirdness in there. And I'm a big fan of Alex Garland in general. And it's interesting to see what he's doing with his career because he had shifted into directing and he's directed Annihilation, Ex Machina, and Civil War, and all these movies. So he definitely in Devs, the TV series. So he's established himself as a strong director, having a writing career before that, doing 28 Days Later and all this, and Sunshine and all
What
this
wa-
other
what
stuff.
was what was his involvement in Men?
He directed Men.
Oh, I love Men, the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
That's a great weird one.
Yeah, that one's really weird and good too. But yeah, it's interesting to see what he's doing now because he's sort of well, he's writing again with like just doing stuff from the writing angle with these movies. And then also with the movie Warfare, he sort of co-directed that. So that
Mm.
was sort of something different for him. But yeah, I really like following whatever he does. Like he's one of my favorite filmmakers out there. Mhm.
That's very cool. The I rated this on Letterboxd. I gave it 4.5 with a love heart, and I sort of regret not five bangering it, because I've been thinking about the movie a lot, which is normally a sign that it's a favorite. I think the part that I didn't react so well to was the extended torture scene and in the barn.
Mhm.
And yeah, I get it. It's a violent place. I think in my quote unquote old age, I'm getting a little bit more sensitive, not necessarily to violence, but extreme cruelty and having these people flayed alive, their skin peeled off, including a woman. Um, I did not like it. My wife did not like it, and it was very unpleasant. And yeah, that's the point.
Mhm.
But you know, if they just killed them, I would have been equally on board with them being the villains.
Yeah. I sort of I sort of agree. I've had a little bit more sense of stuff like that. Maybe not as much, but like I know what you mean for sure. And also it just felt a little derivative to stuff like A Clockwork Orange or like even like funny games I think
Oh yeah,
of.
yep.
Sort of with these the weird um what would the word be? Uh what's the word for somebody who's um
Like a sort of eccentric,
yeah, eccentric is what I was looking for.
verbose,
Yeah.
talking.
Eccentric killers.
Yeah, and I
Which you
guess he
have in funny
is.
games in Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, Lord Jimmy, does have a bit of a Alex Delage sort of
Mhm.
presence, and I think you could connect the line to the funny games ones as well. And
Mhm.
they make a point of sort of speaking in a particularly posh way that is very
Mhm.
incongruent with the savage ways they're talking. And what was it? Does the term was it making tribute to Old Nick? There was a term they used, I think, and you go,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I know it's not going to be good.
Yeah. It was some sort of satanic thing with old Nick. But it was interesting how they, that final sequence with the other people in the gang thinking that they were actually meeting this, sort of grand demonic being
Well, it
being
was
Dr.
interesting,
Kelson, who is actually
because
just a
of course
person.
Kelson was going along with it until he understood the extent of what they were doing, and made a
Mhm.
moral choice. And the funny thing is, once he does that, then Jimmy, of course, says this guy's actually a fake. And I thought the reaction from his followers might be, "So you were lying to us because you knew he was fake, and you were saying
Yeah.
that he's the real old Nick." Um, And of course,
Mhm.
the another fantastic scene was the first meeting between Jimmy and Dr. Kelson, because Jimmy clearly really respects this guy. He's the probably smartest, most normal person that he's met. And I'll say that
Mhm.
Jimmy, even although threatening his life very really, he still, I think, gives him what he would consider to be a level of respect. Even saying, "I really like you. I've liked talking to you, but if you don't do this, I am going to kill you, and I don't want to, but I will."
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was the only reason that Dr. Kelson really went along with it was just because he was like, "Well, I'm going to kill you if you don't." So, and then once that he realizes that Spike's involved, that's where he sort of veers off because he's like, "I want to
Yeah.
get Spike out of this. He's already gone through too much, and I'm willing
Yep.
to sacrifice my life." But which was a good ending. But I did like how um, you know, when he first starts, or when Dr. Kelson first starts the Iron Maiden thing, like Jimmy is like really impressed and is smiling. All that
Oh,
stuff was
yeah.
fun. Mhm.
Well, I was smiling too, damn it. Um,
Yeah.
and what a great year, as in 12-month period for Jack. What's his name?
O'Connell, I think.
O'Connell. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, with his amazing villain in Sinners
Yeah.
as well, and that fantastic dance scene. He's really sort of establishing a niche for eccentric, charming villains
Mhm.
in quasi
Yeah.
horror movies.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd rewatched Sinners like after I'd watched this, but it was the same month. It was like at the end of January, I rewatched Sinners in the theater, and it was only then that I realized that that was the same guy.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, he's great in both movies. I'm looking forward to whatever he does next. He went to the Oscars in Vampire Teeth, apparently.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's what I'd do.
Yeah. But anyway, just to sort of wrap up the review, like I would give it a 3.5 still, but that's only because I haven't rewatched it. But I think, talking about it and thinking about it, it could easily be a 4. But I think I still do prefer the first one, but that could change, or the previous one, 20 years later, but that could change in the future. And I hope they get to, wrap up the trilogy, even if it is a streaming thing. I feel like they can do it. So I hope it happens.
I am. I'm getting out my phone not to be rude because I want to check Letterbox. I feel like I keep writing these. Yeah, so I rewatched. Wife and I watched all of the. Not that there's that many, but we watched 28 Days Later. I rated it as a 4. 28 weeks later, I'm pretty sure I gave that as a 4 as well, just like Frank did, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and 28 years later, what did I give that? I gave that 4.5, and then I gave this one 4.5 of a love heart, but it should have been a 5. So there's
Mhm.
actually a trend of me liking them more and more. 28 Days Later, it's a classic. Um, it is
Mhm.
very difficult to watch now. It looks
Yeah,
like absolute shite.
that's the big
And
problem with it. I agree. Mhm.
yeah, it was an interesting way to do it, but digital cinematography was so it's below DVD quality, and
Mhm.
although I don't always need everything to be perfect, it is distracting.
Well, it sucks, especially in that movie, when at the end they have a sequence that's shot on film
Oh
at the
yeah,
very end, and you're just like, after going through all of that, you're like, well, why couldn't it have looked like this the entire time? I
yeah,
wish it
that's
could have.
right. Yeah, and I mean these days it would have been like it would have been something more like with Steve Jobs where you've
Mhm.
got different types and it gives it a different look. So you would these days it would be maybe on a high quality iPhone and then film and you'd see that difference. Um, Looking at it now, especially watching it on a nice big 65-inch OLED TV, it's just such a difference that it's a distraction and I just can't completely enjoy it. It is too
Yeah.
distracting for me. It looks muddy, blurry,
Mhm.
pixely, and not in a way that adds to the atmosphere. So the way things are going, the way things are tracking, next one should be a 6, or the way my
Yeah.
ratings are going.
Hopefully. I'm looking forward to it. And I feel like there's enough love of this series that in the future, like 15 years from now, there could be more. But
Totally. I think the next one will end it, and it's. I was just thinking
mhm.
about this as I was talking to you. It's a trilogy that ends on a trilogy because you got
Mhm.
28 days, then 28 weeks, and then you got 28 years, which is split into
Mhm.
3 movies. So it's a trilogy that ends with a trilogy.
Yeah, no,
That
definitely.
must be unique, right?
Yeah. But anyway, it's a good movie. I recommend it to everybody. It's still one of the better things that's come out this year. Actually think this year's been a decent year, but so far. But it's still one of the better things that's come out. So
I
yeah, I would recommend
I was
it.
actually, I was actually looking because it's my number one movie of the year so far, and I always start my top 10 list early and just when
Mhm.
movies come on that might be in contention, I just start chucking them on. But I was looking at Letterboxd. There's only 3 movies I've logged are actually 2026 movies. This one, obviously, Greenland 2, Migration,
Mhm.
which I gave 3 stars and I would describe as watchable. And then I mentioned him earlier, Jason Statham in Shelter, um,
Nice.
which I gave 4 stars to. Love those movies.
Mhm.
Loved Beekeeper. I think it was in my top 10 of that year.
Mhm.
Liked the next one, whatever it was. And the big missed opportunity. Do you know anything about Shelter starring Jason Statham.
I think I've seen like a TV spot or something, but
Yeah.
like I'm only vaguely aware that it's another Jason Statham movie.
That's basically all you need to know about it. But
Yeah.
the thing I noticed is, you know, he Jason Statham is the beekeeper.
Mm.
So there's this movie. It's called Shelter. His job, because he's always got some kind of job. His job is a lighthouse keeper. Like, why not call it the lighthouse keeper to sort of like connect it with the beekeeper?
Yeah.
Jason Statham, he's the keeper. He's a keeper, that one.
That would be good. I did enjoy The Beekeeper in sort of a fun, ridiculous way, but
It
yeah.
is so insane. The
Mhm.
thing is, the amount of damage he causes over, and not to defend these people, normally when someone goes on a massacre like that, it's because they killed their family or something like that. This is because these are phone scammers.
Yeah.
And he is full on, full on destroying all these people. And it's
Yeah.
like, again, part of me is like, well, serves them bloody right. They are evil people. But it's like, I was just surprised the level of carnage when the crime was telephone
Yeah.
scam.
Well, the reaction to the scamming feels a little over the top. Like, not that what happened wasn't horrible, but it seems like you could have figured things out before reacting that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then it goes to some pretty crazy him just bashing in scammers and whatnot. But yeah, I did enjoy it when I watched it. Mhm.
Top quality.
But now we have a mini review of The Beekeeper in here. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, thank you for being here.
Oh no. You're welcome. Thank you.
Mm,
Always fun to join.
mm. Yeah, and I'll talk to you again later. And thank you everyone for watching and or listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Jules.
Thanks.